Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are back here at the Open Peace Podcast. We are here with Abu, Jared, Kane, and we are welcomed by Sarah Williamson, our special guest today. It's lovely to have you with us, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen.
Real pleasure, real pleasure. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing out here in Israel, and that could be great to kick us off.
Well, so I'm a journalist. I'm from Australia. I'm 30 years old. I began my journalism career when I was 23 years old in Australia, working for Australia's biggest TV network over there. And I worked in Australian media, in Australian television for about 3 or 4 years there, and realized it really wasn't for me. Not television itself, but Australian news. Australian media is very insular. Being so far away from the rest of the world, they're incredibly disconnected. And I always had such an interest in the geopolitics of the Middle East. Having a father who spent the majority of my life living in the Middle East, I found myself always watching it. So I realized that this is the area that I needed to live and work in and really absorb it all. So I packed up my bags and I moved over here. And here I am now, 4 years later, still covering Middle Eastern news.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. And I'm sure that's one hell of a change, right? From Australia, I spent some time out there myself to come to Israel. One big culture shock, I guess. What was that like for you, and what could you tell our guests about the difference in culture?
It really was. Look, it was my first time when I had never been to Israel before. I had never set foot in the country when I got the job. So I actually got off the plane, dropped my bags off in my Airbnb, and then got in a cab and headed straight to the office and started my job that day. But all in the same day. But I don't really have a problem with new cultures, and this is the thing I love. I'm a big traveler, but I don't like traveling to places that are similar to places that I've grown up in or used to, so really sort of really Western society, places that speak English and things like that are not places that I would be necessarily interested in traveling to. For example, I've never been to the US because I'm from Australia. So it's
a lot of similarities there, you mean, to Australia?
Yeah, just as in, I don't need to go to a place that has a McDonald's on every corner. I have a McDonald's on every corner at home. So
True.
Yeah. These are the things that I didn't need. So I love the fact that I walk into a country and I don't speak the language, and these people, everyone's shouting, and I'm having to understand how to order a falafel on my own for the first time. These are the things that I love. So it's
the challenges of the culture shock, you can say.
Absolutely. I like putting myself out of place. And my dad always said to me, once you start feeling comfortable in a place, Sarah, that's when you realize that you need to move on. So always make yourself uncomfortable. If you're not making yourself uncomfortable, then you're not really pushing yourself enough in life.
It's true. Would you say Israel still makes you uncomfortable?
At the moment, no. And that is a strange thing to say, considering we've just been through an 11-day conflict as well. The biggest we've been through since I've lived here. I mean, there's been a fair few flare-ups in the past 4 years since I've moved here, but this is by far something that's been extraordinary. I mean, even people that have been born and raised here have said that this is the biggest thing they've ever dealt with. I know people that have said that, foreigners that have said that it was far scarier than Protective Edge. People that have said that this felt more dangerous than any war. My boss, who's in his 40s, has said that this felt more scary than any war that he lived through, just because of the danger on the streets, the racially fueled violence that was going on, the sheer number of rockets that were being thrown over the border, So even though it only lasted 11 days, it was really heavy for 11 days. But that doesn't make me uncomfortable. I'm not I'm not scared by what is going on, and what's presented in front of me. These are the things that I'm used to covering by now. You slowly but surely develop a thick skin to things when you become a journalist as well. So if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen, I guess.
For sure.
Absolutely. So you're right. It's been unprecedented in the sense that we've never really had like race riots the way that we have in the mixed cities this time. But the fact that we have this time, to me, is indicative of potentially worse situations in the future. That it's obviously progressing and escalating over time, just in a general sense. So why do you think, first of all, that the tensions have actually led to people fighting with their neighbors and attacking, their fellow citizens? And what do you think we could do to diffuse it before it gets there again?
I think, to be honest, the racially fueled violence on the street, what we saw in these mixed cities was some of the most shocking, heartbreaking scenes to come out of this whole conflict, because it's completely unprecedented, and Israelis, especially in I live in a mixed city. I live in Jaffa, and this is a city that I love so much, and I love my neighbors, and I've never for a second in my entire time being here ever felt unsafe in my city. And now I have people for the past few weeks having to say to me, Sarah, do you need someone to walk you home? Do you need? And in my head, I'm like, no, I don't, because these are my neighbors, these are my people, and I am having people telling me that it's unsafe for me to go home. And I'm like, don't, just because what you're seeing in the media and on the street and on social media especially, doesn't necessarily mean that everyone in this area is necessarily going to be attacked. And I think social media really plays such a heavy role in this. And I know that we haven't seen this in the past. And, Hamas, for example, even in the West Bank as well, in the past, we haven't seen so much support for Hamas in the West Bank as what we have now. And we are seeing that as well. So it's not just the Arab Israeli, the Palestinian citizens of Israel that are really getting their fire, the spark flamed inside them now because of this conflict with Hamas, but it's happening between Palestinians across the board, and it's a social media flare up which is really fueling this. And the Jewish community as well are taking the far right Jewish community as well are just categorizing all Palestinians together and taking the actions that they're seeing from Hamas and putting them all in the same barrel as well. So everyone is kind of not understanding that not everyone is the same. Palestinians and Israelis are not enemies. Jews and Arabs are not enemies. Muslims and Jewish people can be friends. They can love each other. And people are forgetting that that Hamas does not represent every single Palestinian that exists. And the Israeli government does not represent every single person that lives in Israel. So these people that are fueling this fire are only then this is trickling down. People are seeing a small group of people start on the street and then going, oh, well, they're fighting with each other, so now we're going to fight. And then now it's become a race war, and it's just disgusting. It really
it's easy to generalize also. If one Israeli did that, you generalize.
Yeah, exactly. One Israeli did that, so now every Israeli did that. So, it's just, and also as well, the language that gets used as well, this person's a terrorist as well. So when we see things on the media, when we see the word terrorism get used, about things that are happening on the streets, that also brings up fire within these young adults as well. These young Palestinian adults who are sick of what they've had to live through in the past, and it builds anger. You can see that it builds anger, and you're not going to. It's not going to make it any better when they're getting called these things. Eventually, sometimes something's got to give. So, this is something that, and also when you're seeing them being called terrorists as well, you're going to see these young Jews think that, put this label on everyone and think that everyone is a terrorist. So it's the language that is being used in the media as well, and across social media also is really fueling the fire. And I think that what we've seen here in Israel, and also internationally as well, is really just being fueled by social media, and it's really hard. I think if things were just left to the professionals, this stuff maybe would not have been so severe.
I agree.
Well, sorry, I know I went on a little bit of a tangent, but I really think as well that when it came to those the riots on the street as well, that there just wasn't enough police enforcement here on the streets in Israel. And the police didn't. This is my personal opinion. I know it's hard. And I'm not a police officer, and I don't represent the Israeli police force. But I would like to know where they were, where everyone was, and why wasn't there's the army, even the border police could have come in. There's so many more.
We only saw investigation of some footage. That's it. Like only an investigation of who hit who and who hit who after the things happened. But during
Exactly. I myself personally, when those in Bat Yam, because I myself went down there myself with no camera crew, just with me and my iPhone, when that man was lynched on the streets in Bat Yam, and it was sickening. And I actually followed that group of men around when they were walking, when they were going on a manhunt. Literally, they said to me, "We're looking for Arabs." And I said, "What for?" They said, "We're just going to go find them." So I walked around with them, and not one policeman followed us for about an hour. So there were policemen in that group, and I walked with about 100 men, and not one policeman followed. So that's why I have the criticism of the police in this situation, because I was there seeing it firsthand, and they would prefer to guard the ice cream shop whose windows were smashed in than follow this group of criminals who are clearly out to harm more innocent victims.
I would go even further than that. I would blame the police for the last 10 years. Where have they been with the illegal weapons that are being used all over Israel, in shootings across the country? We're a tiny little country, yet there's so many incidents here of severe violence. And I would say, 100% the police have a role to play in what we witnessed during the conflict. But I also want to make a point here, and there's personal responsibility there as well, because 90% or 95% or maybe even more than that of the people on the Jewish side and on the Arab side were not causing any trouble. We're not doing anything wrong. We're sat at our homes, probably just watching the news, watching people like yourself, explaining what's going on out there on the streets. It's that very small percentage of extremists that we have here on both sides that ignite the flames. And then what happens, like you said, the social media, the celebrities, they come on and they pour the gasoline and they pile the wood on, and then it explodes into something so big that we've never seen. And I can remember I've been through a few of these conflicts, back in 2008, 9, 2012. And before then, we didn't really have the social media. So I'm seeing the acceleration of what is happening. And I'm wondering, what can we really do to take control of this? Because it's actually out of control. And I kind of came up with a little equation in my head. The fact that people make money from social media means that if they're picking a side, either pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, they might actually be profiting from pouring gas onto the fire over here.
Wow.
Which is something that is really, really shocking, and I don't know how we can stop it. Really, I'm not
Amir,
sure.
that's how traditional media profits off of
Trends.
bad news going on in the world. When in 2003, when the U.S. invaded Iraq, oh my God, the ad rates on CNN went to the moon. This is the way we've always monetized, bad news, and now it's just moving to this new platform. But I want to bring something back to the.
Well, wait, Jared, wait a second, because I'm interested to hear what you've got to say to that, Sarah.
Just my point there, just to what Jared had to say, was that yes, Jared is absolutely correct. When there is conflicts and when there's times of war, news ratings do go up and advertising slots do become more expensive and more people do tune in. But that doesn't mean that the news are profiting off opinions, because news, by rule of thumb, is meant to be unbiased. So that's the difference between news and social media. I know these days it is virtually impossible for any journalists and any news outlet to remain 110% absolutely unbiased, but they do their best. Most places, most journalists.
Some
and
do their bit.
The ones that are credible do their best to remain unbiased, So the ones that are, like CNN or places like that do. We're not talking about I've lost you guys. I'm sorry. I don't know where I've closed the street. There you are. Sorry. They're meant to have absolute objectivity, but so they're not trying to benefit off selling an opinion, but profit off it. But unfortunately, that is what it is. And the news does sell. It's not selling a war. The news is here to tell you what the news is, and the majority of the time, 99% of the time, the news is negative.
Yeah, that is true. And the internet, the whole internet in general is supposed to democratize us and give everybody a voice, and it's done that. But it's done it to the extent where any unqualified person who has just formed an opinion based on other vague media sources that they've seen can just say whatever they want. They come up with their opinion and they post it online as if it's total fact. And
right. But I also Kane, continuing on what you said, I have a lot of Palestinian friends on Facebook who claimed also that a lot of their posts were deleted unrightfully, in their opinion, because Facebook says that it's kind of spreading misinformation or something like that. So it's democracy, but kind of controlled democracy.
I don't know necessarily if I believe that, though, because I'm not accusing anyone of lying, because I've also had Israeli friends and Palestinian friends on both sides tell me that their posts have been deleted as well. And
I'm sure both. Yeah, I'm sure both.
Yeah,
but you see. But I've seen some very extreme posts.
Exactly.
On both sides as well.
They
haven't been deleted. So
that's weird, right?
Yeah. So I find it hard to believe that some are being deleted and not all of them. It's just, there has to be better monitoring of what does go online, because some of the things you see on social media at the moment, the majority of people, the world is really obsessed with the Israel-Palestine conflict, and the people that are posting, the majority of these people, these social media people, like influencers who are posting about it at the moment. I'm not accusing anyone in particular, but I saw so many people posting about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I'm not going to call it that, actually. I'm going to stick by the i24 news line and say the Israel-Hamas conflict, and they can't even point out where Israel or Palestine is on the map. It's the majority of the world don't see that there is much bigger cases of destruction going on in other places of the world, because they're not getting enough attention, because the media gives so much attention to what is going on here. So
right across our border, Syria. You don't have to go far. Tragic. Where's the
Absolute
outcry?
tragedy.
Where's the
Absolute tragedy.
Yemen?
Yeah.
It's not far from here. Yemen, Libya, not far from
Dude,
here. Sudan,
Lebanon
Somalia.
too. Don't forget them.
Lebanon, Libya. Yes, you've named them all. Like Yemen. If Yemen is probably one of the most devastating situations of our time, of our like conflicts that is going on right now of our time. And the majority of the people, I know people that would have never even heard of Yemen. And this is devastating. This is absolutely devastating. If only places like this got just as much attention. And there is far more people dying there than what is dying here. I am absolutely not taking away from the Israel-Palestinian cause. I'm not. This is an extremely, extremely important conflict, one that has been going on for far too long. It's far too long.
100 years. 100 years now.
Yeah.
You could argue from some people will say it's gone on for even longer than that. So
It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy.
I mean, it doesn't go back thousands, though, to be fair. But
it doesn't. But because of the root of the Israeli argument that we are indigenous to the land, in that sense, it can go back thousands of years.
We can go back to biblical terms as well. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we spoke a little bit about personal responsibility earlier of the citizens, right? That, responsible citizens on both sides stayed at home and weren't out lynching each other and burning each other's shops. So I really think that we need to apply that kind of, methodology on our governments and on our political leaders. It's time to step up. It's time for a bit of personal responsibility, and it's time to make a lasting peace. So there are citizens and the Palestinian citizens don't have to go through, these rounds of fighting every time. You've seen how horrific it is for people, Sarah. It's a tragedy. You have rockets flying, you have kids dying, you have militants dead, you have soldiers dead. It's just one big mess. And the issue is now, right? We have a ceasefire. Sure, people are like, oh, great, ceasefire. Well, no. It's not great because we haven't achieved anything. We didn't get our prisoners of war back. Hamas hasn't been crippled. The next round of fighting is only an eventuality. So I really think that leaders need to start to actually lead and
it does look like a never-ending cycle from this point.
Yeah.
Especially at the moment, the situation of the Israeli government as well. Just you have
the lack thereof.
The lack thereof as well, but there could be hope in the future now that we have Bennett jumping into the change block again, as he has just announced.
We'll wait for Wednesday. Wednesday's the day of judgment, I think, for that one.
Yeah, Judgment Day.
Yeah, the day of judgment. Also, the day I'm getting the hell out of here.
Where are you going?
For America?
Yeah, I'm going home for a month. My little brother is having his graduation ceremony, so
that's nice.
I'll be visiting my family for a bit.
A little bit of respite from the chaos.
Yeah. I mean, with America as it is these days, I'm not sure how much respite it will be, but
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask Sarah about living in Yafo. You said you love the place, and I really do too as well. I went to a wedding, a few years back there. It was absolutely stunning. Really,
the old city is beautiful.
The old city is just gorgeous.
Stunning.
Guys, if you're in it, planning on visiting Israel, you have to go to Yafo. Amazing restaurants as well. Amazing art scene. What can you tell us about how things are now there after the conflict and what things were like pre-conflict? Is there a change? Have you noticed anything different, or are people trying to get back to normality over there?
People are really trying to get back to normal, but there is still a really heavy police presence in the area. Now, we have border police. I live on Yefet. Now, for anyone, for the international audience that listen to this podcast, I live in the hotspot of this conflict, of where these riots have been happening. You can look out my window and you can see like burning trash cans in the middle of the road and people throwing stun grenades at each other. It's a delight, and I say that with absolute sarcasm. There is, to get home, to get into the center of, to get into Yafo at the moment still, the roads are not blocked off anymore, but for a really long time, for over 2 weeks, every single entering point into Yafo, especially into Yafet Street, was blocked off with a police checkpoint, and they were border police. That's for anyone who's not also from Israel. That's a paramilitary police force who protect Israel's borders, who have now been brought in to deal with this sort of situation, deal with heavier situations that are going on inside Israel. Now, at the moment, they're still patrolling the area, but people are still getting back to normal. Throughout the 11-day conflict, the majority of the shops in Jaffa were closed. It looked like the first lockdown of Corona. There was nothing. The place was an absolute ghost town. Now things are going back to normal. People are picking themselves up and going back to life, and things are looking back. Everyone is returning back to their normal life, except for the fact that there is police here. So we still have police checking everyone and patrolling the streets and driving around all the time. But life is returning back to normal, and it is really beautiful to see, because that is just. This is what I love about Yafo, is the beautiful unorganized chaos that we have going on here, and it's just I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say that other than this last couple of weeks, the last year, let's say, you've also been able to see the beauty of Israel and the amazing parts of being here. So. We've mentioned before on this podcast, but I especially want to get your perspective on it. We've said before that if the Middle East were entirely peaceful, it would probably be the hottest spot for tourists in the world, especially because it's the birthplace of religion, or the 3 major religions of the world right now.
And civilization.
And the diverse, geology and everything.
So there's even economic benefits of us coming together and finding 100%. A way forward, like massive economic benefits for the whole region, actually. And we only need to be able to have enough vision to see that. We're just too short-sighted at the moment, at least the leadership.
Yeah, I can confirm that. Sarah, as a Samaritan, I have both Israeli and Palestinian IDs. I can take tourists to both places, and it kind of makes me really sad that Israelis cannot access some places easily, because there's really spectacular places for people to see here. So tourism is something I wish I would
as a non-Israeli and a non-Palestinian, I can also confirm that there is beautiful things to see on both sides. I've spent so much time in the West Bank, and obviously a lot of time here in Israel, 4 years. And it's spectacular. I've also spent a lot of time in other places of the Middle East, and you are completely right. It is a beautiful part of the world. It's just, it's really unfortunate that for lack of a better word, it can't really get its shit together. Like it's
true.
Yeah,
that's where the personal responsibility, forget just Israelis and Palestinians. Look at the wider conflicts going on in the Middle East. Personal responsibility for your actions and your country's actions, I think, can go a really long way. If you asked a generation or 2 or 3 ahead of us, if you could go travel in time and go ahead of time, you would see Israelis and Palestinians living side by side and saying, how did we do this to each other for 100 years? These are the horrific events that happened. A, B, C, D. It's all documented. We've got all the reports. We know what's happened here now for the last 100 years. And I just think it's such a tragedy, especially when you consider the fact that these are supposed to be people who believe in God. This place is a holy land, so treat it like a holy land. Behave, like it's holy. treat it well. Don't burn trees. You know, people are out there burning land and throwing rubbish everywhere, and it's you know, that's not conducive with the Holy Land. And I just think that if we did apply that kind of education from a young age on the Israeli side and on the Palestinian side, you know, slowly you can see things changing. And I think that, you know, Abood can definitely confirm this, that education is going to be key in solving this crisis, this conflict.
Yeah, because once you have like an idea embedded in one's mind, in the kid's mind, it's going to be really hard to change. Like if he has a certain hatred toward certain people, it's just going to be hard to change that. And even on a university level, I studied in a Najah university. Some of some courses talk about the this conflict, in a way that would not really kind of motivate people to look on the bright side and look for solutions for peace, but rather maybe look for, they make them look really badly on this conflict, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Talking on some courses I took.
Yeah. I also feel like exposure is probably, the very first step towards getting anybody to change their mind. Just being around different types of people will change your opinion on that group. I mean, like up here in my city of Haifa, where we had some demonstrations, but things here didn't get too violent compared to the rest of the country. And the people who were particularly violent, they were mainly out of towners, people coming in from more homogenous areas and just trying to wreck the biggest target, kind of. Like on my street, we have Jews and Arabs living here on the same street. Some police come up here and they cause more problems when they come here because we're fine with each other. Like we've been living next to one another for a while now, and we're fine. Like we know each other, we know what we're about.
Yeah.
And that's probably just the first step. But people here in this country on both sides of the Green Line are so segregated from one another, and I hate using that term because in an American context it carries a lot of baggage, but that's what it is. We're segregated to the point where there's very little contact outside this particular region of the country.
No, I don't know how true that is, Jared. There's a lot of places that are kind of a bit more mixed, and if you go to certain places in the Galilee, people are more integrated and they do go to each other's villages and visit here and there. But I would agree with you that the main line, there is separation between the two, but it's two very different cultures. And I think that at the end of the day, if we're going to need to unite, we can embrace each other's differences and embrace each other's, if you different qualities. And that can go a long way, because if you actually look at it, religious Israelis, religious Jews, and religious Muslims and Palestinians, they love this land. The love for the land is the same, or they could even compete for the love for the land. No, I love the land more. No, my olives are better. No, my olives are better. That's the level we need to get to. And I think
my tahini is better.
And tahini, your tahini is the best. So the Palestinians and the Israelis can't.
You got it early this time.
They can't mess with that. No.
But I also agree with that point, with the integration. I think integration between mixed cultures and religions and stuff, the fact when you don't integrate, this is the main core problem all around the world between, even in Syria as well, you have Christian leaders and, there's every single war, not every single war, I take that back, but the majority of wars begins because there's conflicts. There's a lack of understanding between religions. And here in Israel as well, you see people become more accepting and more understanding of their neighbors and more understanding of the plight of the other side, if you will, when it comes to those living in coexisting neighborhoods, because they've got to know Jews have got to know Palestinians or vice versa. But, you know, if you speak to someone from, say, you know, give a time, like, you know, who didn't go to school with any Arabs whatsoever, went to a school where it was entirely Jewish, they're going to have absolutely no idea of what it's like to be an Arab living in Israel, because they probably haven't met very many in their life. And that's really sad. That's incredibly sad to grow up in an area and not really know the plight of the minorities living in our countries. We can talk about living in the Galilee and how peaceful they are and how well these people are coexisting among each other. That's all well and good in the Galilee, but that's not these aren't the areas. This is not the center of the country where the majority of the decisions are being made, where the majority of the country is living. The majority of the country is living here in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, which Jerusalem is a coexisting area, of course, but, like, you know, these suburbs, these out of city suburbs as well, Renana and places like that, they might have a little bit of a lack of it. I'm not saying they don't, but there could be less of an understanding because they haven't had a chance or had an opportunity to necessarily get to know the other side the way that people in coexisting areas have.
Yeah, so maybe, you know, coming onto the podcast and bringing Palestinians together with Israelis, this is the way forward, you know, to get people talking that are maybe not, you know, haven't spoken before, and this is something that can really help get people to just get to know each other a little bit more and understand. And I think also, you know, the learning of language, education is key. If Israelis knew just a little bit more Arabic, and a lot of the Palestinians and the people living here just knew that Hebrew a little bit better, even though a lot know Hebrew very well, I think that would help connect, you know.
Guaranteed, Amir.
Arabic is taught in the schools here, though, right?
It is, but not a very
Arab,
good level, you know?
Minimally.
Not a good
Yeah,
level. I don't know
minimally.
any of my friends that can speak Arabic like fluently.
Yeah.
Same thing with Palestinian schools. In schools, they don't teach Hebrew, but in university, you have an optional course to study Hebrew.
Yeah.
Right.
And not all academia does give you the opportunity. In some courses, in some academic path, you're not even allowed to take a Hebrew course. Not specifically for Hebrew, just like French Hebrew. So it's limited, definitely.
Yeah.
And which is sad because, like you said, Amir, it's huge potential for people to get to know each other and bridge the two people better. We're not going to be talking in English. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to some degree.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And also just to expand on that, I know that in Israel, when it comes to the language you learn in school, it depends, because you have a choice mainly between having your kid get an education in Hebrew or having them get their general education in Arabic. You kind of have a choice, and the main way it goes is that Jewish people send their kids to get their general education in Hebrew, where Arabic can be taken as like an elective course. And Arabs mainly send their kids to Arabic-speaking schools where they get their general education there. They're going to learn Hebrew either way because, I mean, they live in Israel. They kind of have to.
Yeah.
The West Bank's different, though.
Yeah.
It is. But I think one of the big things, it's kind of immature, really, but it's also natural that we tend to look at the acknowledgement of the other side's injustices, the injustices that have been done against the other side. To acknowledge that, we look at it almost as if we're betraying our own kind, which is silly because there's no future where, well, first of all, there's no future where either of us disappear. We're here for the, for the long run. And I think the only way forward is to actually be honest and also vocal in a reasonable way about the injustices that have been done to us, and then figure out how to right those.
And also resources maybe kind of have an impact on us, because imagine if both people have same amount of resources. I don't know if this is realistic or not, but same amount of resources, same amount of rights. I think the conflict would go would be much easier to solve to some degree. You know what I mean?
Well, what do you think holds us back the most? Oh, Amir's getting stuck, I think.
Yeah. Is he still here?
I don't know.
Yeah, you're getting stuck a little bit, Amir.
A little bit.
But answering your question, Kane, I really haven't thought about it. About resources just in general, but like, I think our message haven't reached Amir yet, so.
Yeah.
I don't think they have either.
Yeah,
Is that better?
Still a bit broken up.
Wait, you could understand what he said?
Yeah, he said, "Is that better now?"
Oh my God, you have a superpower.
I was actually wanting to ask Sarah the question.
Okay.
We see. I've actually forgotten what I was saying.
You were asking about people having to live together and accept that you're going to live together. Was that?
No. What I was asking is, what do you see as the biggest thing that's holding us back from overcoming the conflict? What do you think needs to happen in order to move us forward?
Jerusalem, obviously. It's Jerusalem. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that was a really broad answer, and that's not what you wanted.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Oh, we lost him. Okay.
He'll be back. He'll be back. He's like a boomerang. He always finds his way back.
There he is.
See? I told you.
Jerusalem, by far. If it wasn't for Jerusalem, I think this problem possibly, and I've been told I'm naive for believing this, but I am a very positive person, and I really do believe in the faith of humanity, and I believe that deep down everybody loves each other regardless. And I think if it wasn't for Jerusalem and the ownership of Jerusalem and the claim to that land of Jerusalem, this wouldn't be a problem anymore. I think that this two-state solution would have worked. I think if it wasn't, if Jerusalem was out of the picture and Jerusalem could have been independently owned, and Israel, this would have become a land of international ownership,
Corpus separatum.
Yes, this conflict wouldn't have been a problem. But having East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine and Jerusalem as the capital of Israel is just not going to work at the moment. And before we saw these race riots on the streets in Israel, I truly, truly believed that not our generation, not the generation below us, but maybe the generation below us or the one after that, were going to be the generation that solved the peace problem here. I really did believe that. But these problems, that these riots on the street have set Israel back, at least Israel and Palestine have set this area back 30, 40 years. I really do believe it.
It is worth noting.
I hope we can change that.
Yeah. Well,
I really hope it too, because it's just heartbreaking.
It's really awful. I was going to say, I don't know if you've heard this. I'm sure you probably have because you're very in the know. But the idea of a sort of canton system has been bandied around a little bit, having a sort of federations style idea. Different people have come up with their own ideas for the formulation of some kind of confederate system.
Or federation.
A federation where we would have, different cantons, Palestinian majority, Jewish majority, completely mixed, different levels. And it might, to some extent, allow for more freedom of access to the holy sites, because it isn't just Jerusalem. We have Hebron and lots of other sites that both sides wouldn't want to give up. So there's, in the same way, from a religious perspective as Jerusalem, lots of places, both sides adamant that they need to have access to. So maybe that kind of idea could allow for people to, be a sort of resident of one canton, but able to travel freely.
Yeah, that actually, I can understand that. That would, if there was some kind of access to all these areas, then that could potentially be an option. But it's the religious. It's the religious, it's ownership of, or just the territorial, having access to these religious sites is what is causing the problem here. It's absolutely the only the issue here at hand. It has nothing else to do. Like, I think, well, of course, it has to do with this is, people being kicked out of their homes and vice versa, and saying we were here first. There's all these sort of, ownership of land, who was here first. We can go back forever. We can go back. We can start this conflict anywhere from biblical terms or from 100 years ago.
You can even go before biblical times. You can go to Canaan.
Yes, if we wanted to. But let's not get into that. But
Not to say you're going to extend the show for another 3 hours. We ain't got time, bro.
We need even longer. But the main issue at hand is the religious sites. So if they just focused on that and managed to find a way to make it that work, then this could be the issue that solves it. And I also think, as well, as time goes on, the world is becoming less and less religious as well. So as we continue to go through time, I think this may also ease the issue and ease the burden that the Israel-Palestinian conflict might have, because the world is becoming more and more secular, and hopefully secularism may influence the conflict. I don't know. That's my personal opinion. As a secular person, as an atheist, I don't see, if I was in control of the issue, I would be like, how about you just have it? So that would.
Well, I want to try and put a little positive spin on things, because you got me down when you said it. You've set us back 30, 40 years.
I'm sorry. It's true.
Yeah, I understand. I understand exactly where you're coming from, right? But
I'm not sure if it's that long though.
For people that are interested in Jerusalem and what's happening over there, and that being the key to everything, and I agree with that fully. If you can solve Jerusalem, you can solve all the other bits and bobs, no problem. We are kind of in a situation where there is hope and there is a possibility to do something, because the status quo at the moment, nobody's happy with it. Israelis, religious Jews, hate the status quo because we can't actually go and pray on the Temple Mount, the holiest place to us in our own country. Well, what's that about? And the Palestinians, obviously, we've seen what's happened recently up in Al-Aqsa. They're not too happy with the status quo, with Jordan being in charge of the holy sites and whatnot. So there can be some type of renegotiation into how everything is managed up there. And to me, as somebody who's also agnostic, I think that at the end of the day, you have to solve it up there, because it's one of the biggest tourist sites in Israel. It's the place of contention for the three religions. You have to have that city as a peaceful, perfect place to come and want to visit. And I think that you have to put that personal responsibility on the religious leaders and on the people that run our country and the people that run the PLO and the Waqf as well, the authority that is currently in charge over there in the Temple Mount. And those negotiations could lead to something. They could lead to a change in thinking, because I don't know if you know, but technically you can't go into the Dome of the Rock at the moment or Al-Aqsa if you're not Muslim. But that wasn't the rule before 2000. Yeah, and that wasn't the rule back in the 1990s and 80s. You could visit, so it shows you that things have been more free.
You can visit You can visit between particular times.
Does it depend on age or something?
I'm saying go in.
Oh no, you can't go inside the mosque.
No.
Yeah, but
can we go? Can we go in the Dome of the Rock?
You can't go inside. I'm saying back in the day, you could go inside. It was something that was changed. Yeah, it was something that was changed. So we can always make changes and adjust to what is needed on the ground.
Yeah, I think there might. This is beyond my. Religion is something that I'm not really that much in the like. I'm not all that educated on the complexities of this area in Jerusalem and how it is managed. Amir, you basically just taught me. So all I know now. But it does. You are completely right, because it is. I would argue it's. You said it's one of. I would argue it is the biggest. It is the biggest by far. The biggest tourist destination in Israel, if not even probably one of the biggest tourist destinations.
Like 2 years ago, they said that
It's gotta be.
top city
Rivals Athens, definitely rivals Athens and Paris.
For sure. There's pilgrims that come from all over the world just to see Jerusalem. And, if this is so important to so many people, this is like a lifetime, journey. This is something people wait their whole entire life for, to go to this place, and the government needs to take it more seriously, and then it needs to be under a lot more control. I think that maybe there needs to be some form of international committee, or there seems to be some form of like mediator potentially brought in to sort of maybe help in or assist in maybe renegotiating how it is monitored, how it is kept secure, and how the area is how the area is sort of kept available and kept safe for tourists and for people who want to use it and people who want to access it, not just for tourism but also for prayer and also for everything, and for all purposes, for what it is actually there for. So it shouldn't just be in the hands of the Palestinian Authority and Israel and Jordan, but maybe someone who has less of a personal interest in it, a country that is not necessarily directly involved in it and has less of an agenda attached to it as well, could potentially be of benefit to the situation.
Yeah, when I organize my tours here at Mount Gerizim, which is like an hour away from Jerusalem, it kind of really bothers me a lot when tourists, but I also understand where they're coming from, when they ask me, is it safe to go there? Although it's 1 hour long, like 1 hour far, but is it safe to go there? And that they ask me that because they go through a Palestinian village for like just 15 minutes. It's called Hawara, which is a really safe place, but
I'm so sorry that happens.
It is sorry, imagine you're in America and a tourist asks you, is it safe to go from this state to this state? Or not even that, it's even smaller than that. And now there's what's happening now is that the Israeli government is actually making another road, like a separate road, that will kind of like go around this village. So only Israelis would be allowed to use that road.
That's just compounding the problem, though, really.
That's absolutely compounding the problem.
Yeah, that's completely
I can see why. So, and before, tourism is really in a very big slope. Before it was the corona, it was like, okay. And then it started to pick up, and then again, because of the war.
Really is. It really is a shame. I mean, look, I have a lot of friends in Ramallah, and before Corona hit, I used to go to Ramallah a lot for weekends, just to hang out and stay there and visit my friends. And I'd constantly get asked. People would say to me, "Is it safe? Is it safe? Oh, you're so brave."
Right. Have you been to Nablus?
Yes, I have been to Nablus.
Do you like it?
I love Nablus.
Nice. I studied there, by the way.
Oh, really? I know they have Samaritans that live in Nablus, so
yeah, I live there. So I'm from the Samaritans who live there. Well, technically, it's on the mountain near Nablus.
Yeah, on the mountain up near it. So
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And same thing you said. When people say, when I ask people, when people I hear a lot of people or a lot of Israelis telling to other Israelis who've been to Nablus, like, whoa, how could you go there? Like, it's just like, how is it? Like, they really expect Nablus or like any other Palestinian city to be this really ancient kind of looking village, or something, like a really bad looking village or something like that. Although if you remember, looks pretty modern. Much more modern than many people might think.
Absolutely. And I've also have people as well. Some of my friends say, "Oh, I can't come. I'm Israeli," and I'm like, "You don't walk around with a sign on your head that says, 'Hello, I'm from Israel.'"
Exactly.
And even if you did, my friends wouldn't have. I've had friends that have come. Some of my friends who have come from Israel and have met Palestinian friends of mine and have said, "I'm from Israel," and they've just been like, "Oh, welcome, thank you for coming."
They're super nice. You don't need a hijab.
They've appreciated the fact that they had the courage to come over and weren't afraid to come over. So it's really nice. And if people just actually, if more people did that, if more people actually just had the guts to actually integrate with each other, we would see less of a problem. This is where all my Israeli friends tell me, "Sarah, you're so naive." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm
just see it yourself.
I'm just a person of hope, and I have seen it, and I know it, and I've lived it. But these are also Israelis as well who haven't had the opportunity to go to Ramallah, so they don't see it, they don't know it, So, and they've also grown up. And it's not their fault as well. They've grown up being told. People who are born and raised in Israel haven't had the opportunity to see it objectively from the outside and understand and see international media, see coverage from the other side. They only see coverage from what we're seeing on the Israeli television. They haven't really never met a Palestinian from the West Bank or from Gaza, so it's really not their fault. It's not. And it's up to themselves to either educate themselves personally outside what they're being fed from inside Israel, or from meeting foreigners who could potentially educate them. But for people who weren't born and raised, or people who haven't sort of taught themselves or wanted to have that urge and that hunger to learn more, the majority of the population have been taught, because it's fear mongering. And it's unfortunate that this is the way that the way that they've just been taught throughout their life, that it is unsafe to go to these places and to drive through these places, and they have to build alternate roads because they don't.
No. And, it's worth mentioning that, I don't know if you're aware of the charity Habayit. We've done a couple of interviews with members of it, like Rudy Roshman's probably the most famous one. But
I know Rudy, yeah.
Yeah, so Rudy works with Habayit, and the Home, obviously, is the English translation. And so what they do is they bring Palestinians and Israelis together in different events, different activities to actually interact. And we've done one with them. We helped to put it together, Aboud mostly, in his village in front of actually the tahini factory. Just above Nablus on the mountain there. We did an event with them, bringing Israelis and Palestinians together the event was called Cleaning the Hate. It's picking up trash, rubbish from the ground together and just speaking at the same time.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's all we need, really, is more things like that. And
it really is. That's all you need.
Maybe Arthur's razor was right.
Dialogue. It's just more dialogue. I mean, I know a person, I'm not going to name their name just for safety issues, who lives in Gaza, who opened up a Facebook. You probably know this story, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we might have talked to the dude you're talking about.
May have interviewed him.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and are just waiting to release the episode when he's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Who ran a Zoom call between
Yes.
Palestinians and
it's
talk about this?
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, I'll leave this story out of it, so it won't be a surprise.
Yeah, well, the world's going to find out about it. I mean, the story is already out there, but the man in question side of the story has not really been put out there yet. So, when we get the go ahead, I think that's going to be a big. I don't know if it's going to smack people in the face and make them realize quite the extremity of the situation, but it's also people like him are doing very similar things, and all of those things are worthwhile.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's also a lot of intimidation, and especially I think it's a bit more potent on the Palestinian side of the line. About like normalizing, because like
It's
at that
potent
event,
on our side. It's potent on our side as well. Just look at the word
it's potent on
leftist.
our side,
Just
but I
look at
mean,
the word
like, but
leftist in
hold
Israel.
on, because I mean, like, because at that event that Kane was talking about that we did with Habayit, one of the Palestinians we met, he got threatened because there was a picture of him standing next to us.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to threaten us for having a picture with a Palestinian. That's what I'm saying. I mean, like, there might be somebody who stops you in the street and say, "Ah, you're Bulgaria," there's something like that, but like,
we get called traitors.
We get called traitors, but for them, they get hurt.
I think it is fair to say, I would say that it's far more likely for them to get hurt by their peers than it is for us.
And it's yeah.
But there's shaming involved on our side for sure. Big shame.
Oh, definitely.
It's more. It's far more dangerous for the people in Gaza than it is in the West Bank, as we all know.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%. Sarah, one thing that I've taken from this conversation, it seems fairly obvious anyway. You are pro-Israeli and you're pro-Palestinian, right? You have friends on both the sides. And I would love if more people could adopt your mentality, because that would solve the social media crisis. You don't have to choose a side. You don't have to be pro this or that. You pro both people's growing together, succeeding, achieving, creating peace, creating a great economy, creating a wonderful destination for tourism. That can be the way forward. That can be how we change the dialogue on social media, hopefully.
Yeah, and you're living in the land and you're seeing it. So
exactly. You just have to be pro. I'm just pro humanity, and I think if everyone if everyone was the same and just realize that we are all the same people. It doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter. I am the same as every single one of you in the squares. We all come from a different part of the world. We're all different religion, but yet we're all the same. So
we're all the same. We love the same things, and we should deserve the same things. So
absolutely, we all deserve we all deserve to be happy and just live a happy life. And
of course, unless you're vegetarian,
unless you're vegetarian, then you eat a lot of tahini. By the way, Sarah, I really invite you to come visit our tahini factory. It's called Tahini Har Bracha. It's a really famous one in Israel here, check it out.
I will definitely come visit your tahini factory. I love tahini. So
there you go, Jared. You see, it's always a way.
Yeah, you always get it. Hey, Abood, before we end, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Do you ever just like go to the edge of the mountain just above Nablus and T-pose at the city to assert dominance? Can we do that? Can we do that next time we get together? Can we just get the whole village together? Just stand above the city, T-pose.
That would be the most offensive thing you could do there.
Oh, that's the most offensive thing? Give me 5 minutes. I'll think of 10 things that are worse.
I don't want to give you those 5 minutes.
That mountain above Nablus, I must say, is one of the most beautiful, relaxing, spectacular hangout places ever. So next time I'm there, I expect to see you, Abood, up there as well.
Of course, you got it. I'll send you my documentary also. You'll get some really nice pre-information on it.
Please do. Please.
It's been a real pleasure, Sarah. It's been a real pleasure to have you.
Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure joining you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
It's so great.
Sure, thank you for coming. I think by this time, Jared has his ending, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to try to make this one. Try to make this one creative. Give me a second to set up.
Oh no!
Oh Jesus!
The trick here is to try not to break my furniture or my
What is he
phone.
going to do?
I don't know. I don't know.
Sarah,
I'm
we're as
worried.
clueless as you as to what he's about
I'm
to
worried. This is when I start to panic.
do. Yeah.
Well, there is no clap, but okay.